Hey guys, so in this video we are going to continue creating the player in our game. So far we have the movement of the player. We can move the player left and right. We did that on the last video. And today we are going to deal with shooting lasers. So the player can shoot lasers, and we are going to implement that today in Scratch. So let's start. So this is what we have so far. We can move the player, and we also limited the player movement so it doesn't get out of the screen. Okay, so now let's deal with shooting. Player can shoot, and I'm gonna use the space bar to shoot lasers. And the first thing that we are going to do is to import like a shooting sound, so that we can test when we are creating now the first version. So let's just upload a sound. I called it player laser. I remember that I renamed the sound effects. So I don't quite remember. Oh, sorry. Oh, you can see it here. Let me show you. Because, like I said before, I imported this pack of sci-fi sounds from Kenny. I'm gonna put the link in the description. Um, and it has like a lot of sounds, as you can see. And I think I use laser small 1 or 2. I tried to listen right now to see which one was it, and I couldn't find out. But it's probably one of these, or you can choose whatever sound you want. So I'm gonna import the sound player laser. Let me see. I'm gonna put it softer. Yeah. Okay. Softer. Yeah. Okay. I think this doesn't mess up with the recording. So we have the sound, and now what we are going to do to play the sound, I mean to shoot the laser. Right now, shooting the laser is only playing the sound. Then after we're going to deal with creating the actual missile. So to shoot the sound, we're going to use exactly the same as we had before. So we need an if condition, and so when the player, or if the player presses the key space, we play the sound. Start sound, player laser. And I didn't say that, but I didn't say this before. But make sure that you import the player's laser into the sounds of the player sprite or the player actor, because like I said before, each actor can have his own sounds, and also the backdrop can have its own sounds. So please just make sure that you are selecting the player sounds, and then you import the sound to this actor. And now in the code, so we have if key space is pressed, then we start the sound. So let's just try it. Okay, and now you see that we have a problem when we do it like this. What's happening is that since this if condition is inside a forever block, just the moment that we start pressing the key, we don't need to press all the way down, but just the moment we start pressing it, you can see that it runs a lot of times. That's why we are hearing like the sound repeating a lot. So one way to solve this is, instead of having this if block with the key space pressed, we can use the event when space key pressed. And so if we just do something like this, I'm going to remove the if condition, and if we do when space key pressed, we start the sound, player laser. Now we can see that it works perfectly. Just to go back to show you something that it's also interesting about the sounds. Let me just go back and create this again. Another thing that we could also do, just to show you the difference, here in the sound box, you have the start sound, and we have the play sound until done, just to show you the difference. So before, what we had before was something like this. So it was running, and each time we pressed, it called the start sound block a lot of times. So because it's inside the forever block, we could also try to use the play sound until done. And what this does is that it will play the sound when it reaches this block. It will play the sound and will only continue when the sound is over. So what this means is that it's going to play the sound, and it will only repeat the block when the sound is over. And this was able to work because we only want to shoot one time, and we could use the sound to limit that. And you can see that now it works perfectly. But the problem is that if we try to move the player and shoot at the same time, it doesn't work. So you see that I'm moving the player, so I'm just pressing the key, and each time I shoot, the player stops moving. And that happens because the execution of the game, the execution of this block, stops here on the play sound. So it doesn't enter here, and then the player stops momentarily until the sound is done, and then repeats, keeps moving, and plays again. And that's why the player is moving, stops, moving, stops. I just keep pressing, and the player stops because the execution is stopped on the play sound until done. So just to show you the difference between the start sound and the play sound until done. So this was not the answer for this problem, so I'm going to put the start sound here on the space key pressed, and okay, now we are shooting. I know we are not properly shooting because we don't have the missiles yet, so that's what we are going to add now. Okay, so to add missiles, the first thing we are going to do is import the sprite for the missiles. Space Invaders, sprites, and I have some, where is it? Player score. Oh, laser, here. I called it laser, yeah. So I'm going to import this sprite. You can see, like, you can see it is really small here in the middle of the screen. This is like a really small sprite just with a painted white areas. So this is the player missile. And so we imported the missile, and now we are going to need the missile to move up when we shoot. So what happens is that when the player shoots, the missile needs to appear. So the missile cannot be on the screen at the beginning. We need to hide it, and we can use the show or hide buttons here. So we need to hide this actor, and we need to only show the actor when the player shoots. But now we need to, actually we don't need to use clones. I'm going to introduce clones at this moment, but we didn't need to use it because we can only have one missile at a time on screen, and so we could be using the same sprite, the same actor all the time, because we just need one on screen. But either way, my initial implementation was with clones, and I think it's an important concept to explain, and it makes sense here, so I'm going to go with explain the clones strategy anyway. So what is a clone? A clone is when we instantiate one of the actors that we have here. I mean, when I say instantiate is when we duplicate these actors and we do something with it. So that's what we want right now. I mean, when the player shoots, instead of using the exact actor that we have here, I mean, this missile that we have here, what we are going to do is that we are going to duplicate this actor, I mean, create a copy of this actor, and then we are going to implement the behavior on that copy and not on the original actor. So the original actor will stay there on the screen, and then we are going to only use copies to move them and then destroy when they reach the top of the screen. And how do we create clones? That's the first thing that we are going to see. So here, when we were shooting with the start sound, the player laser, we are going to create a clone of the laser actor. And to create a clone, we come here to the control category, and we have here create clone, and we can create clones of the actor where the script is running, or we can choose which actor we want to create a clone of. So we want to create a clone of laser. And right now I'm gonna not here. Oh, I hide the player. That wasn't it. So I'm gonna show the laser, and if I start shooting, right now I'm creating clones, despite we are not able to see it. Why? Because when we are creating clones, when we are creating copies of the original actor, the clones stay exactly in the same position as the original actor. So right now, I should probably have like a few lasers in screen, but they are all on the same place. So it doesn't seem that I'm doing anything. So what we need to do is to do something with the laser when it starts as a clone. So it's quite different from what we were doing with the player, because the player, the main event was when the green flag was clicked. And with the clones, we don't use this event. We use the event when I start as a clone. And that's in the control category here at the bottom. And we have when I start as a clone, because we only want to apply the code, that the blocks that we are going to drag when this actor is cloned. We don't want to apply it on the original actor. So when I start as a clone, the first thing that we are going to do is to show the missile, because we hide the original one, so it isn't displayed on screen at the beginning. And so the first thing we are going to do is to show the sprite. So when the laser starts as a clone, is a copy, starts as a copy, we show the missile, and then we are going to move the missile up. That's how it works. So the player shoots and the missile goes up until it reaches the edge, the top edge of the screen. So to move the missile up, we're going to use a forever block. And how this works is that since the laser is created, since the clone is created, it just keeps moving up while it's alive. Let's say it's alive. So here on the motion, we can change Y because it's up, and we put the change Y inside the forever block, so it's going to change Y on a loop, and we need to say the speed by what we are changing the Y position. So I'm going to put 8. I think that's the one I use, and I'm going to start, and you see that now we have clones being created and they are moving up. I don't know if you can see it properly, so yeah, you see. Now we have an obvious problem, is that the laser is not coming from the player, and that's something that we need to also deal with. So before showing the laser, what we are going to do is move the copy to the player position. And we have a block for that. So we have a block to go to where we can choose another actor. I mean, we have also a random position, okay? We have the mouse pointer. We can use this block to position something or where the mouse is at that moment. Or we can choose another actor. And in this case, we are going to choose the player actor. So before showing the laser, we are going to move the clone to the player position. Then we are going to show it. And then we are going to start moving it. So let's try it. And now you see that it's working. So we can move the player, we have a problem here. It's not shooting right now. Okay, we'll see what's happening. We have to deal with some other stuff first. So we are creating the clone, we are moving the clone to the player position, we are showing the clone, and we are changing its position on the Y axis in a loop. Now, what we need to do is destroy the clone when it reaches the top edge, because otherwise we would be creating clones and clones and clones, and it doesn't make sense in terms of memory and everything. So we're going to, just as we are creating a clone and duplicating the actor when the player shoots, we are going to destroy it when it reaches the top edge. So now, how can we detect when the clone reaches the top edge? We have two different ways. We have the touching an edge, and we could use this because this fires every time an actor touches one of the edges, and since we are shooting the laser always from the player position and it goes up only, it will only touch the top edge. But I had some problems implementing this. I remember now that when I was implementing the game, I had some problems. It didn't work every time, or it didn't work properly in conjunction with other conditions that we are going to add after, because we're going to need to destroy the laser on multiple occasions. I mean, the wave is going to be destroyed when it reaches the top edge, it's going to be destroyed when it hits an invader, and when it hits a piece of the bunker. And I remember that when I was implementing with the touching edge, which was the easiest one, it didn't work properly. And I am not exactly sure why. I tried to search about it, but I couldn't figure it out, because when I did something like, okay, if the laser is touching the edge or touching an invader or touching a bunker, it should destroy. It didn't work. So I didn't use this one, and I went with another option, which is creating a condition about the position of the laser. So we know that the laser reaches the top edge when its Y position is above a certain value. And I'm just going to open here that layout that we had on the other video. Yeah, here. So we know that the max position on Y is 180. So we know that probably we can destroy the laser when its Y position is above 170, let's say, because it means that it reached this top layer here where we have the labels and everything, and it doesn't matter anymore if the laser is on screen or not. So we're going to do something like that. And just like I'm saying, if the laser reaches the top, if the laser position is greater than 170, we destroy it. And how we do it is with an if block, and I'm going to take this out. You see that when we are trying to put an if block, it will always, you need to like drag it to the correct place, and sometimes it's really hard, because if you drag it or below the block that's already there, but if you try to put it on top of the block that's already there, it's going to immediately put the block inside. You need to take it out, just something. And okay, the condition, if the position, so we have is greater than, so we have the operator, we need to go to the operators and choose the block greater than, and we're going to put here 170. So if the position is greater than 170, then we destroy the clone. But first we need the Y position of the laser. So we go to the motion category and we have here the Y position. So if the Y position of the laser is greater than 170, we destroy the clone. And to destroy the clone, we go to the control and we have delete this clone. So if the Y position is greater than 170, we delete the clone. And I'm assuming that when we delete the clone, the execution stops here, so it doesn't continue to change to the Y. Let's see. We still have a problem here. It should be working, because we can't see if it's working or not, because the clone disappears either way. So we can change it maybe here just to see. Even 0 is at the center of the screen, so we can see. Yeah, it's disappearing, so you can see. But it's not working every time. You see that. You can see, because you can see. Well, I'm pressing, but I'm pressing a lot of times. Right now I'm pressing, and it doesn't shoot every time. I'm not entirely sure why, but probably something about with the event that we are using when space is pressed. I don't like using that event a lot, so it's probably related to that. But we're going to change it in a bit, so we will correct this. So when position is greater than 170, we delete the clone. Otherwise, it's going to change Y by 8. Now, something that we should do is change the sound from the player. I mean, it doesn't make sense for the player laser to be in the player, because it should be in the laser. When we shoot the laser, when we create the laser, it's going to play the sound. I like it, at least I like it better that way. So we're going to change the sound to the actor, to the laser actor. Let me see if I can do this. Probably I can. Yeah, I can. Okay, so I'm going to do it from here. I'm going to take this. We are not going to play the sound in the player. We are going to play the sound in the actor. So in the laser actor. So play sound. No, until done. No. Here we cannot use until done. Otherwise, the laser would appear, would wait for the sound to finish. Despite the sound being pretty quick, but it would wait, and only then would show and move and everything. So start sound. And yeah. We have some problem with this. I'm still trying to figure it out why, but we'll see in a bit. Okay, so we have the laser, we create the clone, change the position, we hide the original one, we drag the sound. Okay, so now what we have to do is to limit the number of lasers, because right now if I just keep pressing, we can do something like this, which is pretty cool, but it's not the objective of the game. So what we need to do right now is that we need to the player will only be able to shoot when there is no other lasers on screen. So we need to have a way to know how many lasers are on screen at each moment. And here I'm going to take this problem that we need to solve to introduce variables. We have a variable, and a variable is basically a way where we can store some data and that we can change and reference it throughout the execution of the game. So, for example, we are going to use a variable, going to create a variable to hold the number of lasers that are on screen. So when we create a clone of the laser, we're going to set that variable to 1, and when we destroy the laser, we're going to set that variable to 0. And then we're going to use that variable to say that the player can only shoot when the laser count is equal to 0, because otherwise it won't be able to shoot. So that's basically a variable. It's a way to store some data that then we can change it and use it throughout the game. So we come here to the category of variables, and we're going to make a variable. When we create a new variable, we have two options. We have option to create a variable for all the sprites, and we say sprites is all the actors. We can create a variable for all the sprites or for the sprite only. Usually, by default, and this is a practice as good as for Scratch as for any other programming language, is to make variables and everything as private as possible. And when I say as private as possible, is by default, the variable should only be accessible to the ones that will need to using it. So if I have a variable that only one actor is going to use it, I should probably go always for this sprite only. There is no advantage in having that variable accessible to everyone if no one else is using it. And also, it makes more difficult to debug the code, to fix the code, because if everyone can access the variable, then everyone can change it. And if we have a problem, we don't know exactly who might be changing the variable. Otherwise, if we have the variable, let's call it private, and when I say private, if we have the variable available only for one sprite, if we have a problem related to that variable, we know for sure that the code that's changing that variable, it's on that sprite only. So it's a lot easier to fix that problem, or to find and fix that problem. And like I said before, this is a good principle, and for Scratch and for any other programming language. Make variables and some other things that we are not going to it right now, but by default, things should be private unless you have a good reason for them to be accessible to others. But in this case, we actually need to have a variable accessible for more than one sprite. Why? Because we're going to use the laser count on two different actors. So we're going to use the laser count on the laser actor, where we're going to say, okay, the laser count is equal to 1 when we create a clone, and is equal to 0 when we destroy the clone. And we're going to need to access the laser count on the player, because when we are going to shoot, when the player is going to shoot, we need to check the laser count value. So we're going to create, in this case, we're going to create a variable for all sprites. And I'm going to call it laser count. Okay, so you can see that we create a variable. It appears here automatically. We can leave it, and then we're going to hide it because we don't want this here. And now, so when I start as a clone, we are going to we have the blocks for the variables, and we can set laser count to a certain value. Okay, we're going to say, okay, this variable always starts at 0, and we can say, okay, we're going to set the value of this variable to a different number. We can change by a certain number. The difference between this one and this one is that this sets the variable to that value. So if I say set laser count to 1, the laser count is going to have the value 1 when this runs. But if I change laser count by 1, what this means is going to increment the value by 1. So if it's 0, it's 1, then it's 1. If I change it again by 1, it's going to be 2, and 3, and 4, and so forth. But if I set laser to 1, if it's 0, it's 1, and if it's 1, continues 1, and never changes. So when I start as a clone, I, meaning the laser actor, starts as a clone, we change the laser count to 1. And when we delete the clone, we change the laser count back to 0. So let's see if this works. So laser count 1, laser count 0. You see that it's working. Despite not working, we have still have that problem, but we're going to get there in a moment. And it's working as expected. And now we are going to change the shooting behavior of the player to use that variable. And I'm going to remove this because now we can use the if block. And I prefer the if block than the other one. So we can use the if block. Inside the if block, we are going to create a clone of laser. And now, when do we create a clone of laser? So what we had before is that we are going to create a clone of laser when the key space is pressed. That's correct. And we need to add a new condition. That's when laser count equals 0. So we need an operator, the equal block, and now we use the variable and say, okay, when laser count equals 0. So the player can only shoot when he presses the space key and when laser count is equal to 0. So just like I am saying, key space pressed and laser count equals 0, we need an AND block to combine these two conditions. So the player can only shoot, the player can only shoot when both these conditions are true because we are using the AND block. And let's see. And now it's working as expected. Yep. We still have some problem here. Probably missing something in the implementation because you see that right now I'm shooting, it's playing, but it's not showing. And it's changing the variable and everything, but it's not showing the laser. Okay. Let me see. Laser count to 1, laser count to 0. Okay, let me just check if I'm missing something. Yeah, here I have everything. Go to player, start sound, laser count, blah blah blah. Position greater than, we don't have this yet. Here I'm waiting 0.01 seconds. Not exactly sure why. And I'm using an if else. Okay, let me try if I use the if else, if it works properly. Sorry, but I'm not exactly sure what's happening right now. I'm not seeing it at least, so let me just change this. Oh, it was not here. Now I'm making just mistakes. Not here, is in the laser. Yeah, this is the one that we want. If else, I'm gonna go into this. If this works, I'm gonna go into this blocking again. Here and here. Because probably the delete clone is not working properly. No, this doesn't solve the problem. Okay, I don't know. I'll need to check what's happening. If you guys know, please let me know what mistake I am doing because I'm not seeing it right now. Oh, sorry. Here. Let me see. I had to wait seconds also. I don't know exactly why. Oh, the wait seconds. I know. It's because of the collisions with the invaders and everything. But okay. I'm gonna check what's happening I'm not going to wasting time here in the video. I'm going to check what happened and probably going to fix this on the next video. So that's it. I mean, the player, oh, and now that's it. Nothing. We're going to hide the laser count because we don't need it. Displaying there. And we have the player. Let me go to the original position. We can start. The player can move left and right. We can shoot. Oh, I really need to fix this. What is happening? Yeah, it's not. Sorry, I'm just really surprised. Like, what am I doing wrong right now? You know. Okay, I'm gonna solve this and I'll come back to you guys. So don't worry. And that's it. It's not perfect, but it's more important the process than the end result right now. So I'm gonna fix this. We'll see how to fix and what was the problem. And that's it for this video. I mean, we have the movement, we have the shooting the lasers, we have a whole new concepts here like creating clones and variables, which are really important concepts here in Scratch. And in Scratch and in other languages, I mean, variables are like, important in all programming languages, of course. Clones, not as much maybe. And that's it. So I'll see you guys in the next video.